All right. Hello, everybody. We will be beginning very shortly. Just waiting for people to kind of join in. Let's go ahead and throw up a quick poll. I want to find out who is using what software. Are you using Excel? And just go ahead and let me know in the poll. And then if you have any questions as we go along, you can, of course, type something in the chat. You can also use the Q&A feature. But I got this poll thrown up here. We got someone using Excel, more people answering. Hello, everybody. I assume that you all can hear me since no one is commenting that they can't. Go ahead and feel free to type something in the chat. Let me know you can hear me, as well as what you're hoping to get out of today's webinar. All right. Okay, we got most people, a lot of people using Excel. Okay. And then Excel or in your head, that's that's a common answer, actually more common than you might think. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and we're going to get started. Let me go ahead and share my screen. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Chelsea Cohen. I am the co-founder and CEO of SoStocked. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about inventory management, but I'm also going to talk to you about supply chain, logistics, and just in general, how to increase your efficiency and your profitability on the supply chain. So we will go ahead and share our screen. All right. Yeah, so we're talking about up-leveling inventory using flexibility and optimization to begin to recover your profit. And that's really why I started SoStocked in the first place, is not just to get a handle on the inventory, but inventory is the most important part of your business. If you don't have inventory, you obviously can't sell anything. It is also the thing that you are going to be spending the most money on. You're investing the most money in your inventory as the single largest expense in your business. So being able to reduce the costs associated with inventory becomes extremely important. If you can lower your cost per unit by 10, 25, even 50%, or not percent, but 50 cents, that is a massive savings across your entire catalog. It is also very massive in terms of, as you continue to scale, those become big numbers. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to stop this poll first and foremost. Let's stop the poll. All right. And then let's go ahead and jump into it. A little bit about me for those of you who don't know me. My name, like I said, is Chelsea Cohen. I've been selling on Amazon since 2014. And for the past, actually 4 years now, I've been very much immersed in inventory management. Was a necessity for my own business, but at this point, I've spoken to hundreds of 6, 7, and 8-figure sellers about inventory, specifically finding out what it was that stocked people out, finding and developing systems to avoid those things, specifically for e-commerce. I've written over 50 articles on inventory and supply chain management, been on dozens of podcasts, and our software has over 1,000 users. We are recommended by top masterminds, influencers, agencies, and aggregators. So I get a large cross-section of what's going on in the inventory space, and I'm able to then pass some of the smartest pieces that I have learned over to you guys. And to start out, the first thing I wanted to kind of dive into is, what is that number one inventory mistake that sellers make? What is it that when I talk to people and ask that question over and over again about stocking out, when people do stock out, what is that thing that causes them to stock out more than anything else? Of course, the supply chain has been kind of wreaking havoc on everything. We're going to talk about how we can weather those storms in terms of supply chain issues. But what is it that sellers actually do that cause them to stock out? That is something I refer to as marketing inside of a vacuum, not having your left hand know what the right hand is doing, right? Your left hand being marketing, your right hand being inventory. Marketing has been a huge focus for us in terms of inventory or in terms of e-commerce. We've been very, very hyper-focused on marketing for probably over a decade. I've been in the space for over 8 years now, and that has been the big focus. People kind of don't really focus on operations, or operations tends to be kind of an afterthought. And so what ends up happening is that marketing finds out this new hack, or they do something to optimize, or they run a PPC campaign, and then that can tend to create such a positive response in the sales side of things that the inventory team is then trying to pick up the mess that marketing makes in terms of leading themselves into stock outs. I have an 8-figure seller client that has done this. So it's not just beginning clients. Had an 8-figure seller client do a coupon discount promotion for the Mother's Day holiday, and then the next month they're turning around and canceling all their Father's Day lightning deals because the marketing was so effective and they didn't pay attention to whether they actually had the inventory to sustain that promotion. So let's talk about how we can get these two pieces coordinated. There's actually some systemized ways to do that, and I do have a free tool to share with you guys regarding this as well. So first and foremost, the marketing team needs to give plans to the inventory team. They need to develop out their marketing plans and send those to the inventory team, so the inventory team can actually vet those out before they apply those changes. Because if they're about to market a product that doesn't have a lot of inventory, and that marketing will cause that product to stock out, the inventory team should then turn around and say, take this one off of your marketing list until we get more stock. So that would be the marketing plans. Inventory has a bunch of other reports that they actually need to also be sending to the marketing team. Oftentimes, the inventory team tends to be a little reactionary, right? If they need inventory, then they order it, but they don't have a proactive way of actually kind of moving the needle in terms of those inventory problems that can come up. So there's specific reports that they can and should be sending to the marketing team, which actually rolls into the marketing plans. And we'll talk about those, and they're kind of listed here, but we're going to go into more detail, not just on what those reports are, but how the marketing team should be using those reports. So let's first go into marketing, the idea that marketing gives inventory their marketing plans. And what does that marketing plan look like? So I call this this whole concept of marketing working with inventory-minded marketing. And we have a free planner. If you go to SoStocked.com/tools, you'll find this marketing planner there, along with some other tools that some of them we'll be touching on later in this presentation. So this is what our marketing planner looks like. And essentially what you're gonna have your marketing team do is they're gonna want to know how to look at the velocity, right? Velocity calculations would be part of it. Whether you're doing a 30-day average, an average of 30, 60, and 90 days combined, are you looking at last year's sales because it's a seasonal product, or do you have to override the velocity and plug in a manual number? That sometimes happens, especially when you're launching a product, you have no data, right? So establish what the velocity is. And then you're going to jump into the trends. Are you looking at a specific trend? Are you launching a product and you want to add the month-over-month growth of that product? Are you looking at last year's sales and you know that your product has grown by 15% from last year to this year? Well, if you just use last year's sales data and don't add that growth trend on top of it, your numbers are going to be too low and you'll be under ordering for that holiday season. Then you have additional sales growth. And additional sales growth is where you want to put something like a PPC campaign. If you plan to do a PPC campaign, you would list out the SKUs that you plan to run and the percentage of sales growth you think is going to be generated from that PPC campaign. So in this example, we have 10% growth. Then we have lightning deals, and this can also represent any sort of sales event. So it can be an email campaign, it could be, let's say, an influencer campaign, And what you do is you pick a date range. And within that date range, you're going to list out how many additional units you think that that campaign is going to provide within that date range. And then lastly, we've got seasonal sales spikes. So this would be a date range and the percentage of increase that you think is going to be generated or has historically been generated. And all of that gets plugged into the inventory plan so that you can see if there are any problems with, let's say, stockouts, for example, or if they have advance notice, they can place larger orders for those additional promotions. All right. Now let's go into the inventory reports. So again, these are reports that are created by the inventory team and sent to the marketing team. If you don't have SoStock, like some of you on this call do not have SoStocked, there are ways that you can create your own reports. They're a little bit more labor intensive, but for example, this is a stock out risk report, and there's a calculation that can be used. So the stock out risk report, it shows you which products will potentially stock out, for how many days will they be stocked out, and what is that date that they're going to be potentially stocked out for. The way to calculate this is to take your total inventory and then divide it by your daily adjusted velocity. And adjusted velocity simply means that you're removing sales spikes and stockouts from that calculation. And when you do that, total inventory divided by daily adjusted velocity, divide that, you end up getting the total days of remaining stock. So you can see what is that day that you're actually going to be stocking out. And that's how you do the calculation to set up a stock out risk report. For this report, quite obviously, the marketing team needs to know this so that they know whether or not to market a product. But the other thing that they can do is potentially avoid a stock out. So if you have a product that is going to be stocked out for 8 days, for example, if they back off on some of their, say, less profitable ads, not only are they going to potentially be able to avoid that stock out, but each sale is going to be more profitable because you're not spending as much on ads. So you're going to be making more on each of those sales. Then we have the slow sellers report. And the slow sellers report, I call this the move it or lose it SKUs. These are the products that they're not exactly dud products. They're not exactly products that are complete failures, but they're kind of on the border. They're kind of at risk of becoming so. They would be something where you would look at a range. So this varies from business to business, but let's say, for example, you have a minimum and a maximum range. And you say, my minimum range is 5 units a day, maximum is 20 units a day. And within that range, we're saying that's a slow seller. It's not a loser, but it's not doing well enough for me to think of it as a viable product. If I don't get out of that range, we're going to have a problem, right? I may have to think of discontinuing this. So this is a very valuable report in that it goes to your marketing team, and your marketing team has to be the one to take these SKUs and figure out how to ramp up sales on these products so that they don't become dud products, right? They don't fall into the next category of sales, which is what we call the liquidation report. The liquidation report would be just a minimum. So the slow sellers had a minimum and a maximum, right? That range. This one has just a minimum. So slow sellers for us was 5 to 20 sales a day. The liquidation would be anything below 5 sales a day. Those are the ones that we plan on not restocking. We need to remove them as fast as possible. We want to recover that cash flow. We want to avoid additional fees from that. We want to free up some space, and we just want to basically find a way to turn that back into some sort of an energy, like money. There are a couple of ways to liquidate. So this list would go to your marketing team, and they would have to help to figure out how to get rid of this. Liquidating in itself, Amazon has a liquidation program. There's also a company called Backtrack, back-track.com. And that company helps with liquidation, and they'll sell things on other platforms and then they take a percentage and you take a percentage. So those are ways to liquidate, but we do recommend to try to sell through Amazon's platform if at all possible, because Amazon's going to charge a fee for you to remove it, to liquidate, or do whatever you're going to do with it. And you will be able to improve your sell-through if you're able to liquidate this product on Amazon's platform. Amazon cares most about sell-through, right? That's their #1 metric. If we look at the inventory performance index score, which is the score that Amazon uses to tell how good you are at inventory management, every single one of those points has to do with sell-through. The first one is sell-through. The second one is excess inventory. And if you have excess inventory, that lowers your sell-through rate. You have stranded inventory, which means that it's inventory that's at Amazon's warehouse, but you can't sell it because the listing is not live. So that affects sell-through. And then finally, overstock. And when you have overstock, that also reduces your sell-through rate. So it's important to understand that that's the #1 metric. So if you can use liquidation methods such as flash sales, coupon codes, lightning deals, deal of the day, Amazon even has outlet deals, which you can access through the inventory dashboard. If you can find a way to move that inventory on Amazon, you'll be able to, one, recover your profit, but also increase your sell-through, which if you have any restock limit problems will help with that. And if you have issues with IPI score being low, it'll help to increase your IPI score. All right, and feel free to post any questions that you have if you have any questions as we go through this. Now, the last report is the FBA Overstock report. So this is any inventory that you have more than a certain amount of stock at Amazon. Let's say 90 days. Anything over 90 days of stock, I want to know about. I want that to go on my overstock report. So you would get your overstock report, and products that are in the liquidation report and also in the slow sellers report tend to be on this report. Not all the time, but you'll sometimes find them on both reports. But your best sellers could also be here too. So what you want to do, you want to give this to your marketing team and start teaching your inventory and your marketing team to think a little bit differently about inventory. Inventory is an asset on our books, but it can be considered as a liability. It's a liability when it costs us more money than it's making us. So even though it's shown as an asset on our books, it might be actually costing us more money and be detrimental to our business. So that's the financial side of things. The other way that you can look at inventory is that it can become an asset in a different way, not necessarily a monetary asset, but you can help to say, take this inventory and turn it into energy if you have to, let's say, boost ranking. So if you have overstock on your bestseller and you want to get it ranked better for a specific keyword, you can take some of that inventory and use it as an asset to boost that ranking. Or if you've got a slow seller, something that's on the slow sellers report and the overstock report, that is the best combination to see if you know you have to drive ranking and drive additional sales to get that product out of that slow sellers list. The overstock will give you the energy in the form of inventory to be able to do that. All right, so this report helps you to clear space, avoid additional fees, and increase, like I said, increase restock limits, IPI score, boosting your rankings, all of that. So these reports are extremely valuable for you to start implementing within your business. All right, now let's jump into another way that people tend to stock out, which is across the supply chain. The problem that we have with the last few years has just been that the supply chain is not reliable. And where we used to be able to take inventory and send it from our suppliers' factory to FBA warehouse, some people are now able to do this more often, but It's important to, if you're having trouble and you can't rely on your supply chain, have something called logistics flexibility. And that's simply put, having multiple plans in case anything goes wrong. The first thing to start to realize is that you have to establish this golden rule when it comes to your inventory, because if you're out of inventory, you're essentially out of business. We are an inventory-based business. We can't sell what we don't have. So the golden rule to establish is never let anyone have all your stuff. Never put all your eggs in one basket. And when I ask people, when they tell me they stock out, I like to ask them, why was it that you stocked out? What happened that caused the stock out? And it is almost always because someone didn't do something with their inventory that they were supposed to do. The ocean freight got stuck in port and all of their stuff is on the ocean. They gave all of their stuff to that container and that container didn't do what it was supposed to do. Or they shipped everything full truckload to Amazon and Amazon didn't check it in for 6 weeks. This is real scenarios that have happened to many different people. Amazon gets your stuff and they lose it, or they just don't check it in. And then they find it, later on, let's say after Christmas, something that happened to me in 2015. So letting someone have all your stuff creates a very precarious situation. And so the thing that has to be done is to start to develop plans around this. If you're used to ordering a container worth of inventory, instead of ordering a container, you want to order a little bit more, because putting everything on that container, that's putting everything in one basket. What you'll do is order a container plus, let's say, 1 to 2 months of additional inventory, because if that ocean freight gets stuck at port, you won't have any way to handle that. So with that extra inventory sitting at your suppliers, you can do an air freight if you need to. So you're not taking on that expense if you don't need to, but if you need to, it's there and it's available. So what that would mean is that you're having to pay a little bit extra to your supplier for that initial payment. And so it does tie up a little bit of cash flow. But what you can potentially negotiate with your supplier that has been done before, we personally do it and we know sellers that have done it. The supplier can hold your inventory there for a couple of months without charging you any storage fees. So they're holding your inventory at their warehouse, not charging you storage fees. And then you can tend to negotiate with them to send your inventory and only pay for what is sent. So let's say you send your container. Whatever your terms are, you pay for the rest of that container, that inventory, but you haven't paid the final payment on any of that inventory sitting at your suppliers. And they'll only charge you when you actually pull that inventory out of their warehouse. So that's something that can be negotiated with suppliers potentially. So that's something to do to make this new shift in your business a little bit more palatable in terms of cash flow. So that's a system that you want to set up. And of course, then you forward it onto your 3PL, onto your FBA warehouses. The other thing that you'll want to do beyond this, so once you've set up this structure, is to actually carry it on to the local side of your business. If you have a 3PL that you're using, the idea would be to set it up in the same way. So you send less than truckload or full truckload of inventory, but you also keep excess inventory at your 3PL, just in case Amazon decides to take 5 or 6 weeks to check your stuff in. Then you have that extra inventory available to send small parcel delivery, which is faster, it's more reliable, but it's more expensive. So you only do it when you absolutely need to do it because Amazon's put you in kind of a funny situation like they tend to do sometimes. So those systems are set up. And then the last piece would be your FBM fulfillment center. So even if you don't hold a lot of inventory there, just having a relationship and account set up with a third-party fulfillment center. That way, if your stuff doesn't get checked in and anything happens, you can still take sales through Amazon as a sales channel, but you're not relying on it as your only distribution channel. That FBM becomes your other distribution channel. So you should always have some way of getting inventory and orders to your customers, even if Amazon's distribution fails. All right. So kind of to recap in terms of your plan A, B, C, and D, again, over order and store excess inventory at your suppliers. Renegotiate your payment terms so you're only paying for what ships out. Split your shipments between ocean and air freight if needed, and then do the same thing for your 3PLs with LTL or FTL and small parcel delivery. All right, let's go ahead. And I really wanted to jump into the side of things that talks about profitability. We have had, and I don't know why, there we go. There's a little bit of a lag. We've had a lot of talk in the past year about restock limits, but that's becoming less of a problem. It's getting a little bit better on the supply chain side of things, but the costs are still very, very high. When we add, you know, all sorts of other middlemen to the process, and they charge and they continue to raise their fees, products become less and less profitable. And the reason I created SoStock was just simply because I was tired of what I call death by paper cuts. It's this concept that every little tiny cut, every little tiny piece that someone is taking, you know, your carton fees, your pallet fees, your shipping, you know, additional shipping costs, those tend to kind of start to cripple you. So all those little tiny cuts, you know, could be the death of you. The other side of this is something that I call little hinges move big doors, right? That's this concept of that you've got this huge opportunity and there's these little tiny things, these little hinges that could create these huge opportunities or these huge benefits. And that's what it is when you actually can find, you know, an additional, say, 25 cents per unit and recover additional 25 cents per unit, and how that can compound within your business, right? It's every little small little tweak to your business that ends up meaning an extra $100,000 a year in profit, for example. So let's walk through some real life scenarios, and then we're going to also talk about some things that Amazon is doing that is making this more important than ever to start to implement. And I truly believe that the businesses that are going to succeed and be able to scale and really be able to optimize their exit are the businesses that start focusing on the operations side of their business. All right. So like I mentioned, death by paper cuts, the key to recovering profit is all in size. The size really does matter in this particular scenario, right? When it comes to your shipping, when it comes to your products, the size is really important, and it's really important to reducing your fees, because when we have a product, the unit packaging, the dimensions of the unit packaging equate to FBA fees, especially when we have the new dimensional weight factor that's been added to FBA fulfillment fees. I'm going to get into what that is. If you haven't heard of it or been affected by it, it's probably because you have a smaller product. But if you've got a larger product, you can definitely see how this affects your bottom line. Then we have carton packaging. Your cartons, the number of cartons you have, those equate to carton fees at your 3PL if you do run your cartons through your 3PL. Then you have palletizing, which equals storage fees as well as handling fees. And containers, when you're shipping a container, you've got all those shipping fees. So let's kind of run through how we can actually optimize some of these things. First and foremost, if you're able to optimize your packaging, you can very, very much reduce a lot of fees. Amazon charges obviously based on the size of your product and the weight of your product. So finding ways to take the same product and make it smaller is extremely, can be extremely valuable. Let's say, for example, you have a product like this, a face cream, and you can get it in a smaller container. Or you have a pillow and you can vacuum seal it, or some silicone and you can fold it differently. All of those things can make a huge difference. So taking that time to kind of see if there are any products that you can do that with can be valuable. For example, I had a friend who sells glasses, sunglasses, had a big bulky case, then was able to reduce that into a sunglasses sleeve and significantly reduced the packaging, so reduced storage fees and FBA fulfillment fees across his entire line of sunglasses, right? And it didn't really make it much of a difference in changing that out in terms of the sales that were still being produced. And that actually, that has a ripple effect. So we'll talk about kind of how that has a ripple effect. Let's say you take your product and you size it down. When you take that product and you size it down, you can actually fit more units per carton. And so the more units per carton that you can fit, the better it is, because any of those fees that you're paying for cartons are actually spread across more products. So you have a lower unit price per unit or cost per unit for those fees. So kind of talking about master cartons, and this is kind of some of the nerdy stuff that I personally get really excited about, and it doesn't seem to be very exciting to other people. But when you start to run the numbers, that's when it can get really exciting. So the boring stuff becomes exciting when you see how much more money that you're going to be making, because you know, let's face it, we're all in this business. We're running a business, not a charity. So the more money that we can put in our pocket and the less we can give to Amazon, the better, right? The less we can give to Amazon or, you know, give to other people. So really the whole idea is if we can put more stuff in less cartons, if we can put more units per carton or more units per pallet, we can reduce the number of cartons and we can reduce the number of pallets. And if we're paying carton fees and we're paying fees per pallet, if we reduce those things, then we actually are paying less in fees. We're paying less storage because we're getting more stuff on each pallet. We're paying less in palletization fees. Every time someone handles a carton, they're going to charge you to label it, to pull it. So if we can reduce that number of cartons, say by a third, by half, that's a significant savings, especially as you continue to do more and more volume. And this is the boring, nerdy stuff that aggregators are doing, the smart aggregators, right? The aggregators that that aren't going out of business right now. So there are some aggregators that are unfortunately going out of business, but the aggregators that actually know what they're doing and are good operators are doing these things, and they're doing them as quickly as possible. They're doing them as soon as they buy your business, because they know that's instant equity. If they can save $100,000 a year by doing something like this, then that's $500,000 that they didn't have to pay you at a 5x multiple because you didn't do that before you came and sold your business. So these things, getting these things in place, not only means that you can put more money into scaling up your business, but you can actually see a larger exit when you actually exit, because you're taking that profit and putting it back in your business. So this is the way to be able to figure out your optimum cartons and your optimum pallets. The only way to truly be able to figure that out is to take your unit size and your pallet dimensions, and using those two pieces of information will help you to figure out what the perfect carton size is, right? You have to know what the carton guidelines are that Amazon has, the pallet guidelines that Amazon has, and then figure out how you can put as many units per carton and many units per pallet as possible. And that's actually something that we built. There's a lot of math involved in it, and it can get very, very heady and kind of seem like something that you wouldn't want to do. But we actually made a free tool. If you go to SoStocked.com/tools, there is, like I mentioned, there are some tools on there, but one of those tools is a master carton calculator or carton pallet calculator. And that tool will do this for you. You plug in your per unit, your unit dimensions, you plug in some of the fee information, and that fee information and the sales velocity information are valuable in showing you how much you could potentially save. Because you're going to plug in this information, you're going to say what type of pallet you're using, and then it'll do that calculation, and it will figure out what your carton dimensions should look like and what your pallet configuration should look like. We've had people submit their actual use cases to this. And we've had people who are not even using 50% of what the pallet can hold because of their current configuration. A lot of people have relied on their supplier to create these cartons, and the supplier basically will get what's cheapest and what's easiest to get a hold of. They're not looking at what is going to fit the most units per carton and units per pallet. So definitely take a look at that free tool and see what you could potentially save. But I will say this, because we have worked with some people on this. Your supplier may kick back on this. They may try to say, you know what, we're willing to optimize, but we want to do X, Y, and Z. And I actually had someone come and say, my supplier said they didn't want to do this. They wanted to do this. That's basically the same, right? And, you know, when you look at it at first glance, it did look like it was the same. But I actually sat down and I ran the numbers on paper, and I sketched everything out, and I did all of that math. And it was going to be exactly the same as what they were doing now. It was considerable savings if they actually did what the tool said to do, and it was not going to save them anything at all to do what the supplier was wanting to do. So you'll sometimes get that kickback from your supplier. The question to ask is why. You want to know, you know, why are they saying this? Why are they not wanting to do that particular type of a box? And usually the problem is that they're going to have to pay a little bit more money per carton to be able to get that box, those box dimensions. And they're not telling you that that's what, they're just not wanting to absorb that cost. So if that's the case, just tell them, okay, fine, you know, if it's an extra 5 cents per carton, let's do that, because I'm going to be saving, you know, 60 cents per carton or something crazy like that, right? Figure out why it is that they're saying that. And that's in the case of anything. If your supplier isn't able to do something, ask them why not, right? To be able to understand their business differently and to be able to work with them better. So this would be your master carton calculator. And one final caveat is you want to make sure that you're not putting so many units per carton without the proper padding and protection. You don't want anything to arrive crushed, because if you can lower your fees on cartons and pallets, but it gets there and you have a lot of what we call inventory shrinkage, which means that inventory, what you order is not exactly what you get, right? Usually by damages or theft or things just going missing. So you want to make sure that your stuff is protected if you're sizing up the number of units per carton. And you can work on this, let's say, with your supplier or with your freight forwarder, maybe with an inspection company. But it's very important to make sure that it's well supported. All right, and then lastly on this particular piece, we want to talk a little bit about the packaging optimization as it has to do with your containers. If you're going to pay $10,000 per container, you want to get as many units into that container as possible. So of course, the first steps of, you know, cutting down your, like we mentioned, your packaging, increasing your dimensional configurations on your cartons, all of those things. And then are you palletizing? Are you not palletizing? Floor loading is often going to be a better idea for you. Of course, work with your freight forwarder to make sure that it's secure, because the only reason that you would palletize things would be to increase that the security and stability of your packages to avoid, you know, damages. But floor loading is going to give you more units per container. The best tool that we've found, and this is another free tool, every tool that I've mentioned so far is a free tool, is a tool called peer-to-peer.com/load-calc. And that tool will allow you to list all of your carton dimensions along with just the various different cartons that you have and how many cartons there are. And it will tell you what the optimum arrangement is to get as many units in that container as possible. And it'll give you what we call like a carton or a container map. That container map is something that you're able to then give to your freight forwarder, who can then help to make sure it's packed that way, and then give it to your 3PL so that they can unload it as fast as possible. Because when a container is unloaded, you're going to be charged fees, labor fees. And so the faster they unload it, the less in fees that you're going to have to pay. So if they have this map, they can arrange it to unload as efficiently as possible, which saves you money. All right, we're talking a little bit about exits. And so I just kind of wanted to paint a picture for you about how these things, when you start to implement them, can have a lot of impact. Let's say carton optimization. When you're optimizing your cartons, let's say you save $82,000. On exit, if you were selling at a 5x multiple, that would be $412,000. Let's say pallet optimization, you optimize to $15,000 in savings. That turns into 75. Air freight. If you're starting to systemize things so that you don't tend to have to use air freight as much as possible, right? When you're doing the inventory minded marketing and you're planning things out a lot better, and you're getting these alerts, if you're using SoStock, you're getting alerts as to when to place those orders, that can end up turning into $250,000 at a 5x multiple. Avoiding stockouts. Let's say you save $40,000 in 1 year avoiding stockouts. And that's not unrealistic. We had, just as an example, someone plug in and we were able to calculate how much they lost last year. And it was, I believe, $130,000 that were lost in stockouts the previous year. And there was one product that only stocked out for 11 days. And that product lost $33,000 in 11 days of stock out. So there can be significant impact to even short-term stockouts, not to mention the cost of any air freight and the cost of having to re-rank that product. And then that would equate to $200,000 on exit. So this scenario gives you over $187,000 in annual profit recovery as you start to look at scaling that up. And then, of course, if you go to sell your business, almost $1 million that you're recovering to your offer if you were to get it at a 5x multiple. It's a lot of money. A lot of people can't afford to lose that much money. And so really getting into investing some time, really streamlining this side of your business can be extremely impactful. If you're having trouble with margins, if you're having trouble with trying to figure out how you will be able to scale your business, this is one of those places to start looking that a lot of people aren't looking at. All right, now let's get into the bombshell that was dropped in January, which is the dimensional weight calculation. I wanted to explain this and how this works, especially if you have products that are larger or you're considering getting into selling products that are larger. And that's the dimensional weight calculation, the dimensional weight factor that Amazon has added. You have a question, let's see. We'll answer that question at the end, but I did see that question. All right, so dimensional weights, we're gonna explain that a little bit. This is a calculation that's used by carriers. And this calculation specifically has to do with comparing the weight and the space of a product. They want to be able to charge you based on both of these factors, because a truck has these two factors that it's weighing as well. You can only fit a certain amount of product or a certain amount of things into a truck, and you can only have it be a certain weight. So if you have a bunch of pillows and you can only fit a certain number of pillows, and if you're only charging on weight, you're going to be charged a lot less for that weight, right? Because the pillows are very light. So they want to charge you based on the amount of space you're taking up. Similarly, if you have, let's say, weights like weightlifting equipment, very heavy, often compact, and let's say in terms of the weight, they can only fill up 3/4 of the truck. There's space left over that they can't fill up because your products are so heavy. So they're going to charge you based on the fact that you are maxing out their weight capacity. So that's the reason why they have a calculation to figure out what to charge you based on those two things. And this often is going to affect people who have large products that are very light, because Amazon's going to charge you based on either the original weight or what they call dimensional weight. And so let's get into what dimensional weight actually means in terms of the calculation. It's fairly easy. You look at your product and you take your length, width, and height, and you multiply those together. And then you're going to divide it by the number 139. That's called a dim divisor or dimensional divisor. And it's just the number that they choose to divide by. Different carriers use different numbers, different divisors, but this is the most common one. UPS, FedEx, and Amazon all tend to use this most commonly. What that actually means in kind of a real life example is this. You've got dimensional weight versus unit weight. And so we look at this queen pillows, this 2-pack of queen pillows. This 2-pack of queen pillows has this dimension, and its actual weight is 5.57 pounds, but Amazon always rounds up, so we're calling it 6 pounds. When you look at the dimensional weight, 28 times 20 times 5, and divide it by that dim divisor, 139, it ends up being 20.14, rounded up to 21 pounds. So you used to be charged as if it was 6 pounds. Now you're being charged as if it's 21 pounds. Very, very significant. Your fees and your profit margin have all of a sudden shot through the roof. And I actually know someone who sells pillows, and their fulfillment fees went up by 94% overnight because of this new dimensional weight change. So when you're looking at investing in or launching new products, or you have products currently that are large, you need to factor this into the equation. All the more reason to find ways to reduce your packaging. So let's go and look at the real world example of what two different products, the same type of product and different dimensions. You can see on the product on the left has the dimensions to be a large standard size, whereas the one on the right is a small oversize. So if we think about what that cost was and what the shipping weight was factored at before 2022, it was the one on the left was at 3 pounds, the one on the right was at 6 pounds. So still significant difference there. But then after 2022, the first one jumps up to 12 pounds, but the second jumps up to 21 pounds. And you'll notice that the price of the one that's at 21 pounds is actually priced lower. They're immediately unprofitable. So becomes a real big problem. And this is products that are actually live on Amazon. So when you break it down in terms of fees, the product on the right, the fulfillment fee, or the product on the left, the fulfillment fees are significantly lower. So you're almost doubling your fulfillment fees. Looking at storage, you're almost doubling your storage fees, your container shipping. And I ran all of these through optimization, right? The carton calculator, the container calculator. And when it's all said and done, the product on the left is paying $14.40 in fees. The product on the right is paying $26.10. So that's a difference of $11.70 per unit. It's a huge difference. And so this is kind of an extreme example, but this is just to show you when you make these minute changes, these little changes, right? Reducing your packaging size, your cartons, your pallets, your containers, how the ripple effect can have a significant impact. Those little hinges that move big doors, you make that one change. And I would start with your packaging if at all possible. If not, then start with your carton and your pallet, right? Using the tool at SoStock.com/tools. We also have an FBA calculator on that link, which does your dimensional factors and dimensional weight. So you can use those two tools to help you to figure some of these things out. And so that's my suggestion in terms of like some of the first lowest hanging fruit is looking at how you're packaging things. And when you come to order again, what is the best way to be able to optimize to recover some of that profit. So that's it. We are going to open up for question and answer. I'm going to jump into just a little bit of an overview on SoStocked for those of you who are not familiar with SoStocked or looking at maybe systemizing these things. The people that are really going to succeed long-term and going to scale quickly are the people who start to put some attention on the operations side of business, on how to systemize it, how to automate it, how to delegate it. Because a lot of the time, the owner of the company or one of the partners in the company is stuck doing that inventory piece because they have this system, let's say a spreadsheet or something. They have a system or they have it all up in their head and they're the only one who knows how to do it. So if you're going to scale your activity as well and focus on those things that are making you the most money, the marketing and that type of thing, reducing your time spent on some of these other things becomes extremely important. So just real quick about SoStocked, we are and came out the gate as the first customizable Amazon inventory management software. We are sellers. We built it for ourselves. We also worked with hundreds of sellers. I personally onboarded hundreds of sellers in the first year and a half of our business, talked to all of them to develop out the tools necessary for Amazon sellers. We have over 1,000 happy customers. We do free data migration. So if you have data in a spreadsheet or from another tool, we will help to get that data into SoStock. And then we do one-on-one onboarding calls. So you can jump on the call with one of our specialists to be able to talk about how best to use SoStock for your business, as well as some of the best features and how to create those workflows for your specific business. We have customizable forecasting per SKU, which includes factoring in restock limits if you still have problems with those. Velocity calculations, various different velocity calculations. Trends, we factor out sales spikes, stock outs, additional sales growth to plan out your PPC campaigns against your inventory. And then an inventory timeline to really show you everything, show you what's going to happen. When do you transfer? What's your inventory look like as it kind of sells through, and all of those aspects. Then we have an order and transfer tracker to track the progress of all of your orders. A customizable inventory dashboards. We have about 80 different points that you're able to filter, to hide or show, to build out these reports. So the reports that we talked about, the inventory report, the inventory minded marketing reports, would be built out here for anyone who's currently using SoStock. You have that available. And then your PO and transfer creation. With a couple of quick clicks of the button, your forecast can then be turned into a purchase order or a transfer order and sent to your 3PL or your supplier. We have a lot of different reviews, people saying a lot of really great things about the tool, which I really like, because that's really the real reason that we built the thing, was that I love helping entrepreneurs and working with entrepreneurs. So solving people's problems, cutting down the time, getting rid of spreadsheets, really being accurate with your forecasting, and avoiding stockouts to make more money. So that's about it. We do have a 30-day free trial. I recommend that you go ahead and dive into that free trial, learn a little bit more about SoStocked and what it is we do. We do have a demo if you're still want to know if it's going to work for you, and that's sostock.com/demo, and you can book a free demo on there. There's also a 12-minute video. But I'm gonna go ahead and jump into some of these questions right now. I got a couple. Fabiola says, can we get this recording? Yes, I'm going to be sending this recording out once we get it uploaded. So today or tomorrow, it will be sent out to you so that you have this information. It's a very good question. And then Lisa asks, what are some ways to sell slow-moving groceries that are very niche? I would say slow-moving groceries, you might consider doing like Facebook campaigns. I would try outlet deals. That would be one of them, outlet deals or deal of the day. Amazon might be able to offer you one of those, an outlet deal. And then also maybe if you have a Facebook audience, or you have have created some sort of a launch platform, to send it out that way and to just drop the price. If the product, if you're going to be losing money on the product, you know, do that calculation. If you can afford to drop your price significantly and you know you're going to move it that way, it could cost you more to pull it and store it, or have it continue to remain at Amazon and incur storage fees, especially long-term storage fees. Amazon's actually starting May 15th releasing a much more aggressive fee structure for aging inventory, starting at I think 271 days. They're starting to charge a lot more for those storage fees and significantly more for those that have stayed on the shelves for over a year. So in terms of slow moving inventory, thinking of how low can I go to avoid losing money, or if I'm gonna lose money, is it gonna cost me more to keep it at the pace that it's selling? Let's say it takes you 120 days to sell through it. Is it going to cost you more within those 120 days than dropping that price and losing a little bit of money? And then what can I possibly do to recover that? So yeah, because groceries is a little bit more difficult. So I would say, you know, needing to drop that price, seeing if Amazon can get your eyeballs in front of some people with one of those outlet deals. You might try to ask back-track.com if they do work in the grocery space. I'm not sure that they do, but they do things like, you know, putting things up on eBay, on other deal sites. So you might try that. And then some people liquidate through Groupon. You'd have to find out if they do grocery. I know that they do some other types of food and wine and things like that, but finding out if you could do a Groupon deal as well might be an option. All right, I think that, yeah, that question was answered. Okay, great. If we don't have any more questions, thanks so much. Lisa says thanks. Fantastic, guys. I'm going to be sending this out, and I appreciate you guys. You can feel free to reach out to me if you want to connect with me. I'm at SoStock.com/connect. That's all my data. That also includes a link to the tools and a link to the demo. So thanks so much, guys. And I will be sending this out soon. All righty. Talk later.